Okay, so this is the project. This is the video for the Computer Science 5-6 Week 2 Solar System project. In this project I created a solar system in Unity and using some more realistic textures gathered from a texture base. I have this, and if we play it, it will create semi, it's semi to scale. There's some parts that aren't exactly to scale, but like for example, the planets are all in scale to each other, and the sun is around half the size of its typical in like IRL size. So this is the typical play, and they take a while. The Jupiter orbit takes around a minute to complete, and that's the scale that I used for this project. And if we jump over to the code, this is pretty much just using the same code from the clock, just with similar, just similar things of using the quaternion Euler rotation stuff, as well as creating over here in the top, creating constants that I can multiply by the time, and that will let me create a different rotation per second or per time for each planet. So that means that they don't all rotate at the same time and at the same speed. And so I have these transforms, and these are in a planets folder, or in a planets object over here. The planets object has the script of orbits attached to it, and this and the object, that's what rotates in the planets object, which has the scripts in it. I have orbit objects, and these orbit objects rotate it around a central point in the sun. The central point is in the sun, and that means that they don't rotate weirdly around it. They can have rotations. I also implemented a moon for the Earth, and that's a moon orbit centered on the Earth, which moves around the sun with its orbit, which means if we zoom in, we can get this moon moves around at the correct time in comparison to the Earth's orbit, and it moves a little fast in the simulation because of the scale, but it does actually work. Similarly, I believe the Saturn rings, they don't rotate, but they have, if we can just, take forever to scroll over here, these Saturn rings are also similarly, they're similarly rotating around in the same object as Saturn. And so one thing that this worked pretty well in the project is just converting the clock code to this orbits code, because it worked pretty well, and I definitely can be optimized more, and using 30 lines isn't the best, but it could be optimized a bit more. But I think for my first major project it worked pretty well. One thing that left me a bit confused was really just kind of wanting to know how to optimize this more, because this is pretty obviously really janky and not the best. As well as just if there's other ways to rotate objects, because having to write out all this for just a single rotation seems like a lot. And I know from doing some other projects that I think there's other ways to do it, and I think that's something I need to look into more. One thing I think I can do from here is possibly even make a more complicated orbit, or just more solar system stuff. Ideally, if I wanted to get really into this, I could make moons for every single planet, and that could be interesting, just to create moons for all the planets. Probably not with super realistic textures like the Earth's moon, but just get the idea, and that would be pretty interesting to see that, because of the implementation of the moon, and it worked pretty well. And for my estimate, I probably spent around 3.5 hours on this project. That's those 2 class periods. Spent around 1 class period actually taking the time to get the scale and the rendering correct on this, just because I'm not as used to the interfaces at that point. And then I took around another class period and maybe like a short little class period to figure out the script and test it. And I think it's worked pretty well. So yeah, that's our presentation.